Welcome, everybody, to episode 77 of Films and Fermentation, the career of director Christopher Nolan. That's right. Welcome to Films and Fermentation, a movie and alcohol podcast. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
We're three friends who like to talk shit about movies while getting shit-faced. In this episode, we return to the filmmaker deep dive. In the past, we looked at Mel Brooks and Steven Spielberg. On this episode, we're going to look at the films of the modern master Christopher Nolan, as well as look ahead to some of his future projects. Spoiler alert, there's only one on the horizon. He is a man who picks
He's selective.
Chooses. He does.
Yeah.
He picks and chooses his films.
Yeah, he doesn't have that big of a film.
It was 13, I think, that he actually directed himself out of the 18 credits that he has.
Yeah.
Don't forget to drop us an email at filmsandfermentation@gmail.com or visit linktree.com/filmsandfermentation to find all of our social media and podcast links. Gentlemen, this show is about movies and alcohol. What are we imbibing in this evening?
Alcohol.
What's imbibing?
What are we doing to get ourselves
That's where
inebriated?
the SAT word you should know.
Yes, it's an SAT word. It's a 25-cent word.
I'll start. A good friend of mine went on vacation most recently, and in his travels brought me back some tastiest of tasty beer. So the two I'm bringing to the table tonight are from Tennessee Brew Works, the State Park Blonde Ale. Okay.
Same here.
It is a blonde ale, naturally, brewed in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's kicking in at 4.5% ABV. It says locally owned and operated Tennessee Brew Works, Nashville, Tennessee, finely tuned like a piano. And I'm going to finish my night with a Oktoberfest from...
You guys are simpatico this evening.
From Yeehaw Brewing Company. From Johnson City, not Johnsonville, Johnson, Tennessee. And this will kick in with a little higher ABV of 6.0% alcohol by volume. And this is a Marzen style lager, since October is in 2 days. And we got to get our October on.
So, just a little background on both of these. I did not do a sampling of the State Park. I just tried it. It's a little bitter for a golden ale. And I did do the sampling for the Oktoberfest, and I thought that was very good.
So my father was over this past weekend, and as you guys know, Rick only likes real beer, regular beer, which I don't keep on stock on the regular. But I was able to give him one of these and asked him what he thought, and he said it was fine. It was good. It was a fine beer.
It's not bad. It's a little more bitter than I would think.
So Rick approved.
So Mike, you have anything to add to the fact that you're drinking the same exact drinks as Kevin this evening, or you're good?
I'm good. Like I said, I hadn't tried the State Park before I bought it. I just bought a 6-pack of it because it's from Tennessee. And then again, it's a little bitter, but I think for a golden ale. And the Oktoberfest was really good. Leo can attest to that.
Yes, I've had the Oktoberfest. I really like that one. I have yet to try the golden ale. Maybe I'll kick into that later if I run out of the drink that I have. But I really like the Oktoberfest. It was a really good one. I decided to go with a mixed drink tonight. I didn't do anything like themed. I just wanted to do something different that had that was a cocktail. And I had some Fanta orange soda in the fridge. So I was like, I wonder what I can do with Fanta orange soda. So I found a recipe for something called a fizzy old fashioned. So it's bourbon, lemon juice, and bitters. Throw them in the shaker, shake it up, pour it into your glass, and then add some orange soda to it. And it's pretty good. It's a nice little cocktail that doesn't taste too much like alcohol.
Well, good.
I mean, I get the bourbon out there a little bit. Mike, I tried that bourbon from Old Smoky.
Yeah.
And by itself, I'm not very fond of it.
Okay.
It burned a lot.
Okay.
The other Old Smoky was very smooth. Like you almost didn't notice it. When I mixed it with ginger ale, it was a lot easier going down. So it makes
Okay.
for an okay cocktail bourbon, but by itself was a little harsh.
A little harsh. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad I only asked you to bring me back one bottle of it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go to the Total Wine and More and off of Naaman's Road and see if I could raid whatever stock they have of the original Old Smokies left.
Yeah, because
Because
you can't get it from the
that's it.
the
After
source
that,
anymore. Yeah, that's it.
I used a little bit of what I had left to make my fizz tonight because I wanted a good bourbon in there. So, Mike, you got a history lesson for us this week?
This day in film history. This day in film history, Star Trek The Next Generation premiered on September 28th, 1987.
And I think we're all better off for it.
Except for Wesley Crusher.
So I was funny as I was watching Next Gen the other night. It was on.
BBC.
Well, I'm using Sling TV right now to
Okay.
to watch football, and so I can watch live TV with it too. So I saw that Next Gen was on, so I was watching a few episodes of it, and like the very next day, somebody posted on Twitter that it was the anniversary of the premiere of the show. So it kind of was like weird how that worked out, but it was yesterday. As of the recording of this episode, yesterday was the premiere date in 1987, and I still love it, still watch it, still love it. It's my favorite of the Star Treks. I know Mike's a old school Star Trek guy.
It's my favorite of the Star Treks too. It's something me and my father could bond over.
I think for me it was
old school. I liked it. I liked Next Gen. I liked DS9. I could never get into Voyager.
I had Voyager. I watched the whole series and still couldn't get into it. But I love Next Gen was the one. Like I knew Star Trek and I was a fan of the movies, and I'd watched some of the old shows. But I think it was Next Gen was the one that really got me into Star Trek.
Well, because it's our generation of Star Trek.
Yeah, it was our generation of Star Trek. It lasted longer on TV, had better special effects, all that stuff. So it kind of got me into it a little bit more. I said, you guys, go ahead, Kev.
I was just going to say, like a fine wine, it got better with age, because the first season was a little rough. Second season, they changed the Doctor, which I wasn't fond of. But then when I saw the tie-in of the Doctor from the original series, not that she was the same character from the original series. She was a different character, but the same actress who had made appearances in the Star Trek original series. And then they went back to Beverly Crusher, which made me happy because, redheads.
Yeah. I look at it as pre-Beard Riker episodes and post-Beard Riker episodes. Post-Beard Riker tends to be a better series of shows.
Although, and I actually like the connection between the Doctor and Picard and Wesley and everything. I like that.
And honestly, and it's oddly enough, though, my favorite episode though was during the second season with Dr. Pulaski.
Oh, really?
But she wasn't heavily, in the episode. It was The Measure of a Man, where they put Data on trial for whether or not he's a sentient being.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great episode, but it's like a good episode in the midst of a season that was kind of weak. What are you going to say, Mike?
Now, there's a good documentary called Fire on the Bridge. It talks about the first 3 seasons of the Next Gen.
Yeah, I saw that documentary.
It almost didn't make
really
it because how much shit was going on.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart didn't even bother getting like an apartment or somewhere to live in LA because he didn't think the show was going to last that long. It wasn't until like the second season that he bothered to get a place to live. I sent you guys something on Facebook you got to check out later. It compares The Lord of the Rings to Star Trek. Yeah. Elf versus Space Elf.
Space Elf
versus Space Orc. Yeah.
Did you see on Facebook the picture of Spock with Spock and Sean Connery mixed?
Yeah, it was
Spock.
I'm Mr. Spock.
I'm
Mr. Spock. Live long and prosper.
Speaking of Sean Connery,
my next.
Yeah, speaking of Sean Connery,
which leads into my next film history is in 1982. Filming begins on Never Say Never Again, with Sean Connery playing James Bond for the final time.
Never say never again, except in this movie where I say never again.
Never again.
Never going to be James Bond again. Got any fun drinks back for us tonight, Mike?
Oh, I do around here somewhere. Hey, here it is. So I'm going to talk to you guys about how to read a beer label again. Some beers.
Man, I heard you, and I want to talk to you guys about extending your auto insurance.
Yes, that too. Some
I didn't
beers
realize there were this many instructions for reading a beer label.
it all depends upon different beers, apparently. Some beers are canned or bottled with a vintage date. These are usually the strongest beers, such as barley wines, and are intended to be cellared for several years. They are aged. The alcohol mellows, the hop grows less bitter, the sherry or the wine-like flavors can emerge. Fans love having barley wine vertically tasting sessions to compare one year to another.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it has to do with the fact that the wine is the base for that beer, so you can
Right.
you can actually like let it sit for a while. They also tend to be pretty strong, those barley wines.
Yeah.
That's why you have to age and let it mellow.
Let it mellow.
Let it mellow.
Mellow.
Call it mellow yellow.
You ever see Up in Smoke with Cheech and Chong?
Yes.
It's a great scene where they get pulled over by the cops, and they got the drugs on them. So Cheech takes all the drugs at one time just so he can like hide them from the cops or whatever, and he starts like freaking out. He's like, "I'm freaking out, man! I'm freaking out! I don't know what's going on." And like Chong's going, "Dude, mellow, mellow." Hey, dude, what the fuck you doing, man? Don't do that to me. All right, so notes from the last show. So when I finished the recordings on Glip, on the program that we use now, they give us a summary of the episode in their own words, and the summary comes from like bits and pieces that it pulls out of the episode.
Oh Lord!
So I wanted to read you the summary from last week's show. The participants discussed excessive amount of pink glasses, pop filters, rehearsal dinners for weddings, formats of the show, happy mediums, podcasts, and video games.
Well, that's us to a T. I mean, you couldn't get a more defined, you know.
I really thought about copying and pasting that onto the show description for Spotify. We received a request from the God of Podcast on Twitter to do a retro review of Crocodile Dundee.
Ooh, that's not a knife.
This is a knife. It came up in like a thread on Twitter the other day because it was another movie that premiered like on this date so many years ago.
Mm.
And there was like a big back and forth discussion going on amongst a lot of the different independent pods. So this guy messaged me and he's like, your show should do a retro review of that. Donald once again wants people to know that he is not providing the pizza.
There will be
he is.
Pizza was
there
not
no pizza available on and a movie podcast.
I didn't say the kind of pizza that he was providing. It could be Elio's, okay? This could be public school, cardboard with tomato sauce.
Pizza.
It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
That's right.
That's right.
Donald can spring for pizza.
Donald wants you to know that
Donald's not springing for pizza.
If you come on to You, Me, and a Movie podcast, all he can offer you is friendship.
Be his friend. He wants to be your friend.
All hail Sergeant Slaughter.
Get down and give me 20 maggots.
So I couldn't wait to text you guys about this, and there was so much I wanted to say, but I was like, I gotta wait till the show because it's too much to like try to put in a text message. So I'm scrolling on Twitter and I'm looking. We have a lot of new followers this week. We're up to like 850 now or something, and I see that one of the things that says Sergeant Slaughter has followed you, and I'm like, all right, whatever, because there's a lot of people out there who use like celebrity names and shit. So I click on it, and it's a verified account. Like it has the check mark next to his name that it's a verified celebrity account. There's a phone number on there if you want to book him for appearances and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. Sergeant Slaughter's following us. So I immediately send a message to Austin Boyer at Wrestling World Podcast. And I'm like, yo, dude, Sergeant Slaughter started following us. And he messaged me back. Oh yeah, he follows me too. He's like, he's a really nice guy. He'll retweet things you put on there. He reviews the shows. Like he'll actually like leave a comment and stuff. I'm like, well, that's pretty fucking awesome.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So
Is that
I
why
went.
our ratings went up?
Well, listen. So I went back on Twitter and I wrote a tweet and I tagged Sergeant Slaughter on it. And I said, at Sergeant Slaughter just started following us on Twitter. I don't know where we go from here. I'm pretty sure this is the pinnacle. About 10 minutes later, Sergeant Slaughter retweeted that. About a half hour after that, we had 45 new followers.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, all hail Sergeant Slaughter.
Slaughter.
Yeah, man, we got a WWE Hall of Famer, legend, and former G.I. Joe action figure.
Oh, G.I. Joe movie star, too.
Movie star
Apparently he
following
was
us.
Yeah.
And I thought that
He
was
was
pretty
in
awesome.
G.I. Joe the movie. He was in The Season. He was in G.I. Joe Retaliation.
I had his action figure.
Yeah.
I had his G.I. Joe action figure, and I had his big, the big rubber WWE wrestler guys that they used to sell. I had that too. I love Sergeant Slaughter. Maggots. So I got some good news. So I already texted you guys the other day about how we are now number 24 on the independent movie review chart.
Was that the one we were like 80 something last week?
We were like 40 something last week.
Okay.
We were 27 on the overall movie review list, and that we were like 80 something on at one point, or 40 something on one point. On the all movie podcast chart, so just movie podcasts in general, we made it to 46 this week. That we were at like 80 something last week.
Okay.
And now, as of today, we are number 46 out of 100 on the overall Good Pods podcast chart.
No!
That's
Wow.
not.
Where's the soundboard? Soundboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
That was kind of weak.
Yay.
So
Yay.
that is non-genre specific. That is the overall podcast charts that we made finally.
You think that's when we
That's
made it?
awesome.
What was it?
Victory!
Yeah. So I am now, because of that, actively seeking some actual like sponsorship and advertisements. So
Okay.
I put in a request with Anchor to have them allow us to advertise them on our show, because Austin does that on his show. So I'm like trying to actively get us some sponsorship now, since we actually have something we can prove that's showing
So we
some
gotta start
success.
small like Blue Chew.
Well,
Like,
we started small with the gratis ad that I'm doing for Newsly, because they feature us on their website as a payment for advertising them on the show, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was pretty cool, and I wanted to celebrate that we're on a.
They scratch our back, we scratch something of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might even give them a little reach around. So I asked some of the people on Twitter if they had any suggestions for games that should or shouldn't be made into movies. I only got one response, but it was from
Isn't that the other way around? Movies that
what?
should be made in the games?
Movies that movies that should be made into games or shouldn't be made into games. And the guys at the Rick and Morty podcast and Apathetic Enthusiasm podcast said, I kept thinking of games that shouldn't be, but there's a ton of movies that you can make a quirky little game from. Even Citizen Kane can be turned into some sort of like newspaper tycoon style game where you have to balance success and childlike simplicity. They could call it the Rosebud scale. And I told him I think that would actually make a really good like mobile game, like newspaper
thought of-
tycoon.
Two more movies that should not be made into video games.
Okay.
One I watched today, Dunkirk. The other one would be Rogue One.
Rogue One shouldn't be a game, or
Shouldn't be?
Because you're going to die at the end.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah, but still,
Star
the
Wars.
success of the mission going through, yeah.
I mean, you don't really survive at the end of Force Unleashed either, because you're an apprentice for Vader.
Man, I thought you were going to come out with like Helter Skelter should not be made into a video game.
No video game should feature
Rocky Horror
drugs.
Show The Rocky Horror Show picture
Rocky
show
Horror
should
Show,
be.
the video game. I would
Yes,
play
that
that.
should
That
be
would be awesome. That would be a great game
You can combine your Dance Dance Revolution rock band theory for that one.
with the time warp.
Yeah, you don't end up with the woman at the end, but you do end up with Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
Or Susan Sarandon, take your pick. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny though.
Whoa! Young Susan Sarandon.
Young Susan Sarandon. I'd probably even take old Susan
Yeah.
Sarandon. I take Bull Durham Susan Sarandon. So we are moving
Here
on
goes
tonight.
Kevin. Doesn't want Adrian to listen to this podcast anymore.
Last week's show was pretty quick. It was a 15-minute episode, and I feel like tonight, I don't know how tonight's going to go. We'll see what happens when we get to our main segment about the career of Christopher Nolan. But until then, please bear with me as I read you a little message from our sponsor. Our sponsor. Sponsor.
And you're going to do this live?
Yeah, I'm going to do a live read. This should be great. Live read for our sponsor, Newsly.me.
Me?
I'm bringing back the Sega shout, only with Newsly.
Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up the most trending articles on the web on topics you choose at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time ever, the entire web becomes listenable all in one place. Browse articles from any topic you choose, from sports, technology, business, science. There's even articles about Bitcoin. It'll find the latest articles and read them to you aloud. They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. Our podcast, Films and Fermentation, is there too. I started using it as my default podcast app. They even have digital radio. Download and use Newsly for free now from newsly.me or from the link that will be provided in the show description. If you use the promo code ANDFERMENT, ANDFERMENT, you will get a 1-month free premium subscription. Newsly.me. Stop scrolling. Start listening.
Now, you see, I hear that, and I really think I'm going to hear, Dave, what are you doing, Dave?
When it
I
says
don't
that
want that, Dave.
it's
Yeah,
gonna read
like
you in a natural
it's going to
human
reach
voice.
you in a natural human voice. I'm picturing Hal going, Dave.
What are you doing,
There was an
Dave?
insurrection at the Capitol, Dave.
just don't know. It's
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true.
What you don't get is it's actually Sean Connery telling you the news.
Today in
Oh,
Chicago.
Brexit is going full force thanks to Boris Johnson.
So before we go on too far, we must
Today
say
in the New York Times, a man dies of dysentery after shoving a watch up his ass for 4 years.
Wow.
Whoa. All right.
So before we move on, I guess we must say rest in peace to Coolio.
Gangster Paradise.
Gangster-
I pour one out,
He's-
but I got carpet.
He's in the gangster paradise now.
Yes, he is.
Whoop, I just spilled one
Yes, here
anyway.
we are being the harbingers again.
We're being the harbingers again. No, I'm not going to spend too much time on Coolio because it's not like he had the same career as Betty White. So,
No.
all right. So tonight's main segment, we're doing another director deep dive, and
So-
tonight we're looking at the career of Christopher Nolan. Go ahead, Mike.
Though Betty White never had We're Out to a song about her.
You don't know that. You don't know that. We need to talk to Weird Al to see what he's got in the
Oh.
can.
Speaking of Weird Al, I was reading up on his movie that's coming out, Weird.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in the trailer, it shows him on drugs and alcohol and having an affair with Madonna and all this crazy shit goes on in the trailer. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that really happened? I'm like, that couldn't have happened. So I
No.
read about it. I read into it. He wrote the screenplay for the
Oh,
film,
of course he did.
and he said that his idea for it was whenever you watch a biopic about a musician, there's always drugs involved. There's always alcohol involved. There's always these crazy
Sex.
affairs. And he goes, my life's pretty boring, so I wrote the life that I thought I should have had. Because he's a vegetarian. He doesn't drink alcohol. He's a really good guy. Like, he hasn't done anything crazy like that. So his movie biography is a fictional biography that he wrote himself, which is perfect.
Nice.
Perfect.
Very nice.
Makes
Very,
me
very
want-
nice.
It's
makes
going
me
to be
want to
on
see it
Roku
more.
TV, yeah, Roku TV or something.
Hey guys, I should have put this out there I don't know, last week when we discussed what we were doing this week.
Mhm.
Does everybody have like a favorite Chris Nolan movie that we can talk about?
Mhm.
Because I really think that should be part of our segment, all of us having something a favorite.
I
We
feel
all
like
blip about it.
I think we should discuss this now.
I think like we all have seen at least a decent amount of Nolan films.
Yeah.
I can honestly say now, aside from his short films and like documentaries that I'm looking at on IMDb, I have seen all of his major motion pictures at this point.
Okay.
I watched Tenet the other day just to make sure that I had it complete. And I even watched his very first feature film, which came out in 1998, called Following, which I had not heard.
I thought that was Insomnia.
I had not heard about this movie until I looked it up on his IMDb. So he does The Following first, and then Memento, and then Insomnia, and then it's kind of like after Insomnia where he starts to get the buzz that takes him, into the stratosphere, because then he does Batman Begins and all that stuff. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mike had just got himself a little bit caught up today. He watched Dunkirk, and you watched The Dark Knight Rises finally.
Yeah, I watched that the other day.
So yeah, I'm pretty much caught up on everything at this point. So
Okay.
I can speak to things that we haven't,
I feel
that you
pretty
guys have seen,
confident to speak about, with the exception of the movie Following and Tenet. I did look for Tenet yesterday. It was not available.
I watched it on Cinema HD because it was the only place I could find it. Otherwise, I would have had to have purchased it or whatever. And I didn't want to purchase a movie I hadn't really seen before because I didn't know if I was going to like it. And based on my first viewing of it, I don't know if I disliked it. I'm just not sure I know what the fuck happened.
Isn't he doing the new one that's coming out?
Oppenheimer,
right?
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and that's one I'm like kind of jazzed for because I'm looking at the cast and it's a pretty amazing cast. It's a lot of his usual players, but still, it's a good cast. So what then? So Kev, since you brought it up, what is your personal favorite Nolan film?
So you guys know I'm a massive Batman fan. I really like the. I know it's shocking. I like Batman '89. I'll call it Batman '92, even though it's Batman Returns. And after Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, I was so heartbroken that the franchise was going in that direction. So I was super psyched when I saw that they were doing Batman Begins, and then giving it that level of realism. So I am going to talk a little bit about the Batman trilogy, but if I had to take that out of the equation.
Yeah, I was going to say, taking the Batman trilogy out.
Taking the Batman trilogy out, I think it had to be Inception. And I really like The Prestige too. But I think Inception was just a unique way of implanting ideas into a mind. And I like that it was deeper and deeper and kind of makes sense when you think of how long you're sleeping and how long you're actually, how long the dream lasts while you're in it, So I really dug that one big time. I think that's the one I'd go with in terms of and I also really did like Interstellar. I thought that was a pretty good movie too. It's tough to narrow down. I'm going to stick with Inception.
I said I'm feeling the same way. It's really tough to narrow it down to one. In reviewing his films for this and getting caught up on some of the ones I hadn't seen, he does have his likes, things that he likes to do in his films. It's obvious it's a Nolan film from certain tropes that he uses and themes that he likes to use. He loves the time travel stuff or the time dilution stuff and all that. So, I mean, that's a big part of it. Mike, I know you have a smaller viewing history than we do, but
since I've only seen 5 of his movies, if we take out the Batman trilogy, that leaves me with The Prestige and Dunkirk. And I thought The Prestige was done really well. I really like
I
that.
love The Prestige. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you should check out Interstellar and Inception. I think you would like them both because
I just didn't have enough time this week to get
no,
to
I
it.
know, but I know
Right.
you appreciate good high sci-fi
Oh yeah.
story, and
Yeah.
they're definitely like high science fiction.
Yeah. And I think Interstellar's even mentioned in Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah,
Isn't that when
because of
Jane is?
the difference in time, like when they travel and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, it was the I can't think of it, the Rosenbridge, whatever it was, when Jane is talking to the other kid who's
The
in
Einstein,
the hospital
Rosen.
with her. Einstein, the Rosenbridge, Rosebud. She's discussing it, and she says, "Have you seen what was the first movie she referenced? Event Horizon."
Yeah.
And then she goes, or better yet, Interstellar. And then she explains it. She goes, "He did it really well in explaining it." You know.
And then I'm looking at the kid, and he's like, "No, I haven't seen either of those two films." And I'm like, "You fucking uncultured youth."
But he's sitting there reading one of her books.
Yes, because
You know.
Event Horizon does a good job explaining that theory because it's all about connecting the 2 points and going through them and all that.
Yes.
Yeah. Now for me, like it's again taking like the Batman trilogy out of there, because if I had to, if I was choosing from the Batman trilogy, it's obviously the Dark Knight is the best of the three in my opinion. But then sticking to the others, yeah, it's tough, man. Like his early stuff, like the Memento and Insomnia, are really good, but I wouldn't put them up there with like his best stuff. I think the Prestige is where he was really starting to kind of find his method, and I really like Prestige. And then, but I think it comes down to. So here's the thing: like, I really like Dunkirk. I thought Dunkirk was was an excellent movie, but I don't know if it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, I think I have to see it a few more times. I have to see it a couple more times.
I'll tell you what I really appreciated about Dunkirk was as you're watching the movie, it takes you a while to realize it's not linear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It takes you a minute to look at it and be like
the first
wait
season
a
of The
second,
Witcher.
this is a scene.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Watching The Witcher.
You're watching it and you're realizing, wait a second, this scene was what happened 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago, and it takes you that time to kind of realize that, and then once you realize it, you're really appreciating the movie more because you're seeing how they all tie in.
Another thing I liked about
one thing I did like about it is for being the way how the movie is and how depressing it can be, and with almost no talking throughout the movie, it didn't feel like it was dragging on.
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was a
no,
really
no,
good.
no.
God, I got a half hour left.
It's one of his. I think it's actually like one of his shorter films. Oddly enough,
It was only like an hour and a half.
It was an hour and 46 minutes, so it's probably one of his shortest films that he's done. And like you said, yeah, it kind of flies by. And that's one of the things I was going to say that I really liked about Dunkirk was the minimal use of dialogue. Like most of the movie was told through, the scenes and the action and the music. Like it just had this steady, tense score that just made you feel kind of anxious the whole time you were watching it.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Because it confused me when the admiral told the private to come on. The French guy died, right?
Mm-hmm.
He drowned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. He drowned in the ship. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the guy the private he told to come on wasn't the French guy.
No, the French guy drowns in the ship.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think I read about that was that he had like a sound playing under the soundtrack that's like indiscernible to human ears. That's like kind of added underneath the soundtrack to kind of ramp up the anxiety. So like as you're like watching the movie, you feel a little more tense watching it because there's this like subliminal tension being added to the soundtrack. Yeah, and he loves his loud soundtracks that cover up dialogue anyway.
I think he takes music, which is why he goes with who he knows. He goes with Hans Zimmer most of the time, and it's such an integral part of his movie. He knows how to use the music to make the movie better. because I know I had read somewhere where when Inception was coming about, he didn't tell Hans Zimmer what he said. No, we're going to have to do we're putting everything aside that you've done before, the drums, he says, this is, you need to come up with something completely different, and basically just gave him a minuscule amount of information as to what the movie might have been about, and Hans Zimmer had to go from there. And then to listen to the soundtrack Hans Zimmer composed for Interstellar it's amazing. It's one of these things where you hear it performed in major orchestras and stuff like that all the time.
Even in like Dark Knight and the other like Batman films, it's that music that kind of plays whenever there's like a big action scene going on. Like I think about him jumping off the building in China, and it's like that dun 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 dun. You know?
Dun. Yeah.
Oh, here I found it from for Dunkirk. There's a ticking sound that serves as a crucial theme in the score. It was recorded by composer Hans Zimmer from one of Christopher Nolan's own pocket watches. He then took the sounds into a synthesizer and altered them in different ways and added them to the soundtrack. So there's this like synthesized like ticking clock sound that's kind of playing underneath everything. And it actually does make you feel a little more anxious as you're watching the film. Like I remember watching it going like, God damn it, what's going to happen next? Like it was so intense. I really liked it. But I think, oh God, it's hard. I'm torn between either like Inception or Interstellar is my favorite one so far, because I really like a good like hard sci-fi film, and they are both really complicated like plots that you have to pay attention. I mean, I don't think they were as complicated as Tenet because I'm still not sure what the fuck I watched, but I think I mean they're hard enough, they're tough enough that you got to really pay attention, but not so tough that you still can't enjoy the movie. Plus, great performances. I think Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar, it's one of his best performances. I think.
Oh yeah,
he's amazing in it. Jessica Chastain's amazing in it. Then again, she's amazing in everything. You have a lot of the usual guys like Michael Caine, who's in Inception, and he's in Interstellar, and he's in the Batman films. You know? He's in Dunkirk. He's the voice on the radio.
Is he really?
When the guys are when you're watching Tom Hardy and the other guys in the fighter jets. He's the captain speaking to them over the radio. It's
how about that?
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
So you even get him in that film.
Well, he likes a lot of the same actors. It seems like.
Yeah, and I think you'll find directors have favorites. You know, have people.
He has a lot of favorites. It looks like because he's got Tom Hardy.
I think it says something about him as a director that all these guys want to come back and work with him.
That too.
Yeah.
You know, like Cillian Murphy's in almost all of his movies. Michael Caine's in almost all of his movies.
Tom Hardy
probably thank him for his career because he put him in Inception and he kind of like shot off from there. So let's kind of go through this a little bit here. We'll look at his cinematography. We're going to look just really at him as a director. He has 18 credits as a writer, but most of them are for movies that he directed as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And then we can look at a little bit of like trivia about him and all that. So he has 3 short films that he does between 89 and 97. Tarantella, Larceny, and Doodlebug. I have not seen any of those, so I can't attest to anything about it. The only movies that I made sure that I was, up to date on were his major motion pictures.
Right.
So 1998, he directs, writes, produces, edits, and does the cinematography himself for this movie called Following. It's a very low budget independent film that he did. He was very young, and it's about a writer. He's like an out of work writer who decides that he's going to follow people around and observe them and try to use his observations as a way to sort of boost his writing skills. But what's supposed to be him just following people around turns into an obsession where he's just like stalking people. And then at one point he stalks this guy who turns out to be a thief who notices that he's following him around and basically like confronts him and recruits him to help him in his robbery schemes. And that leads to like a little twist at the end where, he kind of gets blamed for things that he didn't do kind of thing. So it's like a twisted little like like a noir kind of film. It's even filmed in black and white, like an old noir film. It's also his shortest movie. It's an hour and 9 minutes. I'd like to say it was a brisk hour and 9 minutes, but it was rough to get through. It was kind of slow paced at times, and the acting's not great because it's a little independent film. So,
Right.
but that was his first major film, and then he did.
Hey, Lee.
Yeah,
I need to take 5.
you take 5. I'm going to pause. All right.
What about feeling bumps and cracks?
That's right.
WKRP in Cincinnati. We are back from our short break. Films and Fermentation After Dark.
We're feeling the bumps.
You know what I wanted to say to you, Lee, but you had
Yeah.
started going into the show, was that when your mouth was to the side of the microphone, you had a little bit more. It was a fuller sound than when you were directly over top of it.
Yeah, I don't know how to like sit near it yet. So
Right.
Yeah,
like right
well,
here,
well,
like here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a better
Yeah.
sound there?
From how I got my mic, it's going straight up and down. It gives me the better sound.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
actually,
always like, you're
Mike,
supposed to go like this, you know, like.
Mike, move
like this.
move to the side of your microphone and start talking. Can you hold your microphone up to like the side of your mouth and talk like it's right here?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's no good. No, don't do that. No,
No.
that's much better.
Yeah, it's the top.
But mine looks better like on the side and not like I'm sucking it off.
If you when you got it here, it sounded fine. You're very clear. But I had noticed you had put your drink up and you were talking when the microphone was to your side, and it just sounded, it had a lot more bass to it. It had a lot more.
We'll figure it out as we go. It's my first time using a actual microphone, so
I'm still using this, and
Yeah,
I was the one who was actually in broadcasting. So
I was just jealous of Donald.
The other thing with your mic so far, Lee, is when you turn
Mhm.
to read something, your volume goes down. Not by much. Ooh, can you get the whole thing in? Can you do it?
I could take the wool off of it, and you know.
Oh, he had to take the condom off to do it.
All right, welcome back to Films and Fermentation. We had to take a pee break because Mike was dancing in his chair.
Well, you know, I had to drink a lot more water lately because of some of the pills I'm taking.
So I was talking about the first film he did following, and that was followed by Memento. And I think Memento is the movie that kind of like made him sort of a name in Hollywood, not like the mega superstar director he is now, but like somebody to watch, you know.
The up and coming.
He co-wrote it with his brother Jonathan Nolan, whom he co-wrote a few films with. Stars Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, Joe Pantoliano, a few other like actors that are kind of like recognizable but not like super famous. And it's about a man who has short-term memory loss and is attempting to track down his wife's murder. And the trick of the film is that the movie is kind of going in reverse.
Yeah. And we should include that he's. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think you're going to mention it.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's, as a way of kind of remembering what he learned before, as opposed to just, I don't know, buying a composition book or something. He's tattooing it to his body.
Yes.
You know, so he's leaving these little hints and messages to himself so that when he comes back from a spell of short-term memory loss, he kind of has a clue as to what he had found out before.
So it's Memento chronicles two separate stories of a man named Leonard, an ex-insurance investigator who can no longer build new memories. As he attempts to find the murder of his wife, which is the last thing he remembers, there is a storyline that moves forward in time while the other tells the story backwards, revealing each time. So like the two stories eventually converge and you kind of find out, you know, the twist at the end that, you know, he actually killed his own wife. Spoiler alert. It's one of the first movies that kind of shows his like fascination with time and the use of time in movies. And I can kind of say now, having read that description of Memento and thinking about it, Tenet kind of does that a little bit with the backward storytelling, because Tenet has a lot to do with the past and the future kind of converging with each other. It's time travel in that sense.
It's a movie about apartment evictions, right?
Yeah, it's Tenets. Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Insomnia was his next film. Came out in 2002. A critical success. I don't know if it was that successful in the movie theaters. It seems
It was.
it seems it's caught a following, since then. Like it's kind of like a cult film now.
Yeah, and it's an interesting cast of people that you don't typically expect to see together in a film.
Mm-hmm.
Between Al Pacino and Robin Williams and Hilary Swank. If you were to name these three people, you'd think three separate movies. You wouldn't ever think to, oh yeah, those two go together like Abbott and Costello.
Like I would probably maybe think like Pacino and Swank in a movie together because they have a history of the dramatic stuff. But then Williams, I mean, he does have a history of drama, but this is different for him because this is one of the first movies in which he's the villain.
Yeah,
he is a killer, and Pacino plays an LA homicide detective who is dispatched to this little town in Alaska where he lives to help in the investigation. Film's called Insomnia because it's that time of year in Alaska where it's like sunlight for 45
the sun
straight
never
days
sets.
or something.
Yeah.
And so Pacino throughout the film is suffering more and more from the effects of insomnia because he can't sleep. He can't find a way to get over the fact that it's sunlight all the time. Very creepy role for Williams. He is not funny at all in this film. I mean, there is not one hilarious line.
I love when he does the creepy thing because he's done it in a number of things. He did it in 1 Hour Photo. He did it in an episode of SVU, and he plays a very disturbing villain.
Oh yeah, 1 Hour Photo especially. 1 Hour Photo is a really creepy movie.
Yeah,
he kind of does things. He did things in spurts. Like he would do a series of like highball comedies in like the 80s, and then go on like this dramatic run in the late 80s, early 90s. And then go back to like screwball comedies, and then do the stretch of like I'm the villain.
Yeah,
and then do like he had like these like weird stretches like that because he did Insomnia and 1 Hour Photo, and there was another film that I can't think of the name of where he played the villain, and they all kind of came out at the same time.
Yeah,
a few years of each other. But this is the one that kind of made Nolan sort of like, oh, this is somebody we need to watch. He's got some chops out there. He then did another short film called Cinema 16 before 2005 rolls around with a little tiny independent film called Batman Begins.
Yeah, I don't know many people have heard of that one or not.
No.
It's kind of like it was the film where people were like, who is this guy that they're giving the direction to? The cinema purists out there who have seen Insomnia and Memento and all knew the name already and were like, oh, this should be interesting. But then the people who didn't know Christopher Nolan were going to know him now after this film came out because, it was obviously a blockbuster success.
I think also people are wondering, Christian Bale?
Yeah, a lot of doubt around Christian Bale. Like, why is this British actor playing this American icon? I always thought Christian Bale was a pretty good Bruce Wayne.
I thought he was.
Yeah.
No, I thought he played a very good Bruce Wayne. I know a lot of people mocked him for the
voice,
the change of voice, which was something that came about with Kevin, Batman the Animated Series. Why can't it? Kevin Conway. Kevin Conway.
Yeah.
Conway, who changed the voice between Batman and Bruce Wayne. And they,
but it was subtle.
It was subtle.
His change was subtle. It wasn't like it wasn't throat cancer Batman.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it makes more sense to have change your voice.
Sure.
It's one of the things I kind of liked about the Ben Affleck Batman was that his voice was changed with like a modulator. So like when he spoke, it was like there was like something built into the suit that kind of covered the voice up a little bit.
I'm just going to forget the fact that you said there's something you liked about the Ben Affleck Batman.
I didn't say I liked everything. I just said there was one thing that I liked about it.
You know what I liked about the Ben Affleck Batman? The Batmobile. That was about the only good thing that came out of the Ben Affleck Batman.
Yeah, I thought you liked the end of the movie because it was over.
I like the fact that it introduces the Gal Gadot.
It's not over. He's coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
I think Warner Brothers made a decision that they're going to follow with a multitude of Batman in different universes, and that's their you know.
Well, see, that's where they screwed up because they left off. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. With Dark Knight Rises, they left off where they could continue that story with Nighthawk.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Nolan had always said that he was doing a trilogy, and that was it. He wasn't planning on going like if they were going to do follow up, it was going to be somebody else. He wasn't planning on doing anything past the trilogy.
Yeah, but the DC universe could have kept going with that.
I don't think he wanted to stay with it. He had other projects he wanted to. The only reason he did Dark Knight Rises was because he was kind of contractually obligated to do so. It was obvious that he wanted to move on and do other things when you figure that in between Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises was Inception. So I think he was already had it in his mind that I'm moving on from Batman after this film. And the film was also, like you and I were talking in pre-show, Mike, it was a lot of changes made because it was supposed to continue the Joker story.
Right.
And then with the unfortunate passing of Heath Ledger, they had to rewrite the story.
Yeah.
So
let's go back to where
we began. So after
I jumped the shark a little bit.
No, it's okay. After Batman Begins is The Prestige, which I can say that the three of us all seen and we all love. You know, it's a movie that it's another one that kind of like, I don't know if it was a smash in the box office. I think it did well. But it's a movie that's kind of like over the years has gained sort of like a love and a following.
Yeah.
So there were two movies, and these were one of our twin movies that came out at the same time. And I will say, of the two, Prestige fared better in the box office than the other one, which was The Illusionist.
Yeah.
But The Illusionist got a lot of the glamour, a lot of the, accreditation for what it did, whereas The Prestige made out better. And I think, both of them are really good movies, but I think The Prestige had a much better tale, a much better story.
It was more entertaining, I thought. Yeah. The Illusionist wasn't bad. I think also, too, The Prestige was probably kind of looked at as sort of like comic booky because you had a guy who just directed a comic book film, and the two co-leads were both actors from comic book films.
Yeah.
So I think people kind of came into it looking at it like it was going to be some sort of like popcorn film. And then you sit and you watch it, and you're like, "Oh no, this is a fucking intelligent movie with
what the fuck did I just watch?"
Yeah, with a deep plot and a cool twist and some weird sci-fi and David Bowie is Tesla. Not to mention,
I'm moving on, gentlemen.
S'more Stout.
S'more Stout, yes, it's a dessert beer from Big
I've already
Buddy.
moved on to my
your yeehaw.
My
they're gone. They've been gone.
I have a little bit. I have like one more.
Kev?
They were both very good. That was my first time with the blonde. I'm more of a redhead man to myself. And the Oktoberfest, which I had before, they were both very, very good.
So I'm drinking like what's left of my drink
and
now.
This is super chocolatey. Like I taste chocolate and marshmallow in here. It's amazing.
So we also have to mention that The Prestige starred Scarlett Johansson as well.
Mm-hmm.
In a small but pivotal role.
Scarlett Johansson and Christian Bale and his twin.
Played by Christian Bale. Oddly enough.
And his twin, Jewish Bale. There's Christian Bale and his Jewish Bale.
And don't forget Michael Caine.
And Michael Caine.
But
Prestige, a great film, Prestige. And then that's followed up with The Dark Knight, which is by far his most profitable film, I would probably say. The film that blew the doors off of comic book movies everywhere.
Yeah. Well, the performances from everybody. I know a lot of people want to sing the accolades, sing the praises of Heath Ledger, and he did an amazing job. But it was the story and the actors who were telling it. So.
This is one of those first films I remember being like an internet backlash film, because when people were like, "What? Heath Ledger is the Joker, the gay cowboy."
Yeah.
And then the first pictures were released of him online, and all of a sudden it was like, Heath Ledger's the fucking Joker.
What I loved when that was coming out, one of the first pictures I saw was a frosted glass
Mhm.
scene, and you could see them filming, and you could see the general blurriness of the character, and I'm thinking, that's going to look awesome.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's the picture I'm talking about. That's the one I'm talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
All you kind
Yeah.
of see is
But
like
then
the back of his head a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then to
Looking
see the
up at it.
performance, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, but before this, Heath Ledger was like, the gay cowboy, the guy from Knight's Tale was fucking blue.
He was also in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
He was like kind of a heartthrob actor. It was like
Right.
Brokeback Mountain was like his first major serious role, and then he did a few other pretty good movies, and then it was The Dark Knight was just like, I mean, that's such a, every time I watch it, I love the movie, but it still pisses me off at the end to know that he's dead, because it's like I wanted to see what's gonna, that third movie, what that could have been like with him. I think the third movie was still going to continue to include Bane, but it was going to be Bane and the Joker, and not Bane and Talia al Ghul.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Though you got to admit, and I guess we're transitioning a little into the Dark Knight Rises, it was a nice 360 came around.
Yeah.
From Batman Begins, and you had Ra's al Ghul, and then it was her coming back to to avenge her father.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing about it, they really did telegraph that she was the daughter.
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of knew she was going to end up being something,
because especially when he was in the prison, they say, "Well, yeah, a kid got out, but he was there and he got his face screwed up." I'm like, "Yeah, that's two different stories."
There were some other things in Dark Knight Rises that are kind of cool. Like there was a lot of returning things, like when they're doing the kangaroo court and Cillian Murphy is playing the judge.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, that's cool. They brought the Scarecrow back for that scene. That's pretty cool. So it was some neat things like that.
But you know what was really neat about it was Hathaway bent over on the cycle. That was like
Hathaway's catsuit.
Yeah. She's on the motorcycle bent over. Yeah, that was just a great moment.
Hathaway as the Catwoman was pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed her performance.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like how Christopher Nolan took the characters, and these are comic book characters, super villains. And you can look back at that Batman Forever and Batman Begins and take a look at how campy and comic booky they could be and had been, and he really made them realistic. Catwoman having Harvey Two-Face. The graphics for Two-Face's just design was sickening. To take a look and see his jaw flapping.
You didn't like Tommy Lee Jones?
I hated Tommy Lee Jones in that.
So
it was horrible.
So like the '89 Batman and Batman Returns, one of the things that Tim Burton did well with that was that he had the campiness, but he found a nice balance between the campiness and like the gritty, dark Gotham City. And then Joel Schumacher kind of took it in the Adam West direction.
Yeah, totally made it into a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, like I was waiting for the
lights and everything.
Pop, bow, bam stuff to pop up in the background. And then Nolan went and said, you know what, I'm going to do a comic book movie, but I'm going to ground it in realism. You could have taken The Dark Knight and just, it worked. Batman could have just been a regular guy working as a vigilante. And the Joker could have just been a crazy antagonist without the makeup. And the movie still works. It works as a crime drama and a cop drama and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a great. It's a comic book film that can be serious.
I
just remember watching it in the theater, and you guys were with me. I think we all went to see it together. And when he does the pencil trick, how insane the theater went for the pencil trick.
One thing I will have to say about the trilogy, especially about the first two. I think it laid the groundwork for all other comic book movies. You can see a lot of it in the new Marvel stuff. The Marvel stuff that they try to ground it more into realism.
I mean, they still kind of
It's
lean. I mean, they still lean a little bit on the comic book when you think they.
well, they kind of have to.
Because they're introducing the gods now and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I mean, still is a little heavy on the comic book, but yeah, they took it in a direction where it's like, well, we can still make these seem like real people,
Yes.
you know, and not these otherworldly people. But yeah,
And if DC had taken a cue, an ounce from anything that Nolan had done, then they could have had this whole DCEU, which I'm not saying mimic the MCU because they're different, ballparks altogether. But you could have done something much, much better than the shit show that we got.
it was like they had a blueprint and they pissed all over it.
Yeah,
Exactly. Warner Brothers went, yeah, but where's the money in it? It's like, no, it's about the movie.
It's
But
about
the money, not the money.
But
The
it's,
movie.
it's not what the fans want.
You're trying to
Fuck
say
the fans.
you're trying to say those three movies didn't make money?
No, those three movies made money. I'm saying if Warner Brothers had continued to follow the blueprint and got their head out of their ass about making money off of merchandising and everything else,
merchandising,
merchandising, following the movie, they could have done so much more. They just had to wait patiently to build up what they had to really get the merchandising juices going.
This is Kevin's DCEU rant that is the equivalent of Mike's.
And the
MCU.
reason why I'm doing it,
This is Mike's
because Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan did this awesome layout for Man of Steel. Yes, that's right. Why I'm doing it. They continued. They had something. They took something. They brought it to Warner Brothers with Man of Steel. And it looked like it was going to be, wow, we can actually branch this out. We can actually this is our seedling and let our roots grow from it,
First, you plant the seed, you let the seed grow, you let it become a plant, and then you fuck the plant.
That's right.
Well,
exactly. So then they take Man of Steel and they give it to Zack Snyder, and then shit goes downhill.
So what I'm guessing is you don't want to do a director deep dive on Zack Snyder.
Not anytime soon.
Well,
I didn't think this was an episode that was going to go off the rails.
Well,
it
did.
Now, listen though.
Listen,
Nolan was the producers of Man of Steel and executive producer of Justice League.
That just means he gave them money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jonathan Nolan, didn't Christopher and Jonathan Nolan, weren't they part of the writing set? Didn't they? Or don't they have the writing credits for Man of Steel?
Let me look.
I'm looking at the
because I was almost certain when they were doing.
He has a story credit.
Nolan is, yes.
Story credit, yeah.
Story credit's not the same as the screenplay. It's kind of like he wrote the treatment for it, and then other people took it and created the screenplay.
Because I remember hearing they were doing The Dark Knight, and that was when they had started to formulate an idea. So, we can't do this for Batman, but we can definitely apply this to like a Superman.
I think if you look at the story credit, the original story credit was probably like the first draft. So I'm wondering what his draft looks like compared to what the final draft ended up being. So anyway, back to the list here. So in between Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises is a little film called Inception. Inception.
Is that somebody getting pregnant?
Otherwise known as Knocked Up.
Knocked Up.
Yeah. Okay.
So this film continued his collaborations with Cillian Murphy and Michael Caine. But also introduced us to one of his new muses, Tom Hardy, as well as bringing Leonardo DiCaprio, Joey Gordon-Levitt, Elliot Page, and Pete Postlethwaite, and a number of other. Tom Berenger in a role that was like, whoa, that's Tom Berenger, holy shit! In a movie that's very confusing at first, but when you watch it, it's got a lot of deep levels, and it's another movie where he shows his love of time dilation, because it's like each time you go deeper into a dream, the previous dream like happens at a faster rate than the next dream does, and it's like when you're at level 6, it's 10 minutes is like 3 years in this level here, and all that kind of crazy shit. But great performances. A movie like this only works if the actors play it like as seriously as they do. You know, if they weren't taking it as seriously as they did, it would totally be a mockery. But it was well acted, really great visuals. The visuals are phenomenal in this movie. Great supporting performance from Marion Cotillard as Leonardo DiCaprio's ex-wife in the film. Yeah, I love it. This is a great movie. This is definitely for me like the tie between this and Interstellar, for which is my favorite Nolan film.
Right. Now, I mean, he did what he could do. We have to, the suspension of disbelief, or just trying to understand how. I wish he had like figured out a little in more detail how they all share the dream, how they're all involved in the dream. I know they're all connected to a machine and everything else, but how do they all collaborate in that dream world together? That was the only thing that drove me.
That machine, that machine was kind of like that machine that they connect to go into the dream together is like the definition.
MacGuffin?
Yeah, it's the definition of MacGuffin. It's like, how do we get into the dreams together? This machine. Like that's all the explanation you get for it. I like the idea of the totems.
Yes.
Like they have to have. So Mike, when they come back to reality from the dreams, in order for them to realize that they're not in the dream anymore, because they're so disoriented when they come back from the dreams that they need a way to orient themselves. So each of them carry something on them that lets them know that they're in their reality, and nobody can like touch this item but them, because otherwise it'll like ruin the facade of it or whatever. So like Leonardo DiCaprio has a top, and when he comes back to reality, he spins the top. And if the top stops spinning and falls, if it topples over, he knows he's in the reality and not in the dream world anymore. It's interesting.
Okay.
And then I like Elliot Page's character, or she's Ellen Page at the time, but her character's name is Ariadne, and Ariadne is the Greek goddess of dreams. So a little like weird connection there.
Well, I liked how there was a team, and the team was very specific. She had to be the architect. She needed to know how to navigate through the dreams.
Yeah.
Right. She designs the dreams almost like a maze, because that was the crucial part, because you need to be able to go around, because if things in the dream realize that then everything turns on you.
It's a lot of really cool world building. Like he really made an effort to make everything try to make sense. There was like a reason for everything. Like, why are these people in my dream attacking me? Oh, they're your subconscious trying to defend your brain and all that stuff. So it's like, it was cool. It's a cool movie. And then there's Interstellar. A little more straightforward in the sense that it's a space travel film, but the space travel, again, there's his fascination with time, because they're investigating these planets that are near a black hole. Time, speeds up in different places. So the one planet they visit, I think it's like every hour they're on the planet is 7 years on Earth.
Yeah.
And so they're investigating, looking for a new planet because Earth is dying. And McConaughey is desperate to get back to Earth because he left his kids behind, and he wants to get there before they're gone, before they grow up and pass away before he gets back to Earth.
And the idea is that they need to find this planet to move, to colonize, to go somewhere else. But there's always plan B, which is to build a space station of sorts, which they can live in until they find a new planet to re-inhabit,
I think the other backup plan they had was they had a seed ship. So they were going to like just send a ship to another planet, to the planet, and it had like it was going to repopulate from scratch, basically.
And this is where Newsly comes into the picture, because there are 3 androids. There are 3 droids. The robots. Man, I thought the robots were cool as shit.
The robots are fucking awesome.
They were so. I mean, they talk about their programming and how they need to be. They need to be 100% truthful, but they have to be 80% sarcastic. And the voices that they go, it's like conversing with somebody else.
Yeah, like the one
on the ship.
The one robot like makes a joke or something that McConaughey's not happy with, and he's like, lower your sarcasm level by 15%. I like the designs too, man, because they're not conventional robots. They're these like big blocky things that spin, and
they look like cool. They look like the obsolescence from 2001: Space Odyssey. And I looked into that, and some of Nolan's mentors, or are Stanley Kubrick and Ridley Scott. So that is Ridley Scott and Stanley Kubrick.
That makes sense now when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Another great movie, man. And then he has a documentary short called Quay. I've never seen. I don't know much about it. And then in 2006, if you look, like, it's like every couple of years he releases a film. He's very consistent in that. Like, he doesn't like he doesn't. He's not one of those directors that's constantly releasing things. He picks his projects, he works on them, and he doesn't film them until he's happy with them. So that leads to Dunkirk in 2017. Dunkirk, I think we already talked a lot about that already at the beginning. It's a phenomenal movie. I recommend everybody out there see that film. And then in 2020, this is the last film he released. It was right around the time of the pandemic, so I don't think it got a lot of play in the theaters. I think it was mostly like streaming networks where people were able to like watch it. The movie's called Tenet. I'm trying to think of how to describe this.
It's about a landlord that really wants to get rid of the people in his apartment building.
Those are tenants. This is Tenet.
Oh, shit.
So it stars John David Washington, who is Denzel Washington's son. I saw him. The only other movie I've seen him in was Black Klansman. And what I can say about him is he's a really good actor. He doesn't look a lot like Denzel Washington, but when he talks, it's Denzel Washington. There were a few times where he was saying lines and like, damn, if I had my eyes closed, I would have thought Denzel was on the screen. So it stars John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, the Batman. He's in it. Elizabeth Debicki, who is she was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. She was the leader of the people that were all gold skinned.
Yep.
That's her.
Yep. And Michael Caine.
Michael Caine has a brief cameo in it, of course. There's Kenneth Branagh is in this as well. He plays the villain of the film, or the whatever, if you want to call him the villain. He's kind of like, you're not sure all the time, but it's he's more or less the villain of the film. And there's another actor in here. I'm trying to find his name. Oh, Aaron Taylor Johnson, the guy that played Kick-Ass. He's in it too as well. He plays a character named Ives. So it's another movie with like a stacked cast for him. A few of his returning players. So armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, the protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. So John David Washington's character does not have a name in the film. He's only referred to as the protagonist. They never like actually give him a name in the entire film. And it's a really like, it's so hard to explain because it's another movie that kind of deals with time, but in this sense, it's time inversion. So you can actually relive events by playing them backwards. And so there's a lot of scenes in this film where one actor is moving forward in time, but everything around him is going backwards. And I kind of describe it as Nolan wanted to film a movie in reverse, just for the hell of it, and then just put a plot in place just so he can get away with making it. He's like, I have an idea for a film. I'm going to film a movie backwards.
There's some trivia on this movie.
There's a lot of trivia on this movie.
The production team purchased and then crashed a real 747 airplane into a hangar.
Oh yeah,
that was all practical effects with no visual effects or CGI.
I was going to say that's another Nolan thing is he likes these really big set pieces. So like
he likes realism over CGI.
So like think about the scene in The Dark Knight with the truck that's flipping over.
They were flipped over.
Yeah, that truck was actually flipped over, and they like worked on the design to make the truck flip a certain way because he wanted it to flip a certain way, and they worked to make it happen. Yeah, in that scene, they're trying to break into this storage place that's located in an airport, so they crash a plane into it in order to like break down the security system, and the scene is actually used as a real plane crashing into a real building on an airstrip. Like it's the big set pieces that he really loves to use. I'm not gonna say it wasn't a bad film. I can't say that I enjoyed it too much because I'm still kind of trying to figure out what I watched. It's
Mhm.
definitely a movie I'm probably going to have to watch again to try to figure out what's going on. The only thing is it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And so like I already invested a lot of time into watching it the first time around. And it's not like I could skip it in order to figure out what's going on, because it wasn't until about 2 hours and 10 minutes into the film where I started to kind of figure out what the plot actually was about. That being said, I am jazzed for his next film, which is slated to come out in 2023, which is Oppenheimer. So it's a biopic about the man behind the atomic bomb.
Mhm.
Story of American
that's
scientist
the
J.
story
Robert
of the world.
Oppenheimer and his role in the development of the atomic bomb. Again, bringing back one of his usual collaborators, Cillian Murphy, who's going to be playing Oppenheimer. And looking at the pictures, I'm looking at the picture on IMDb. He looks a lot like the real guy, so it's pretty cool casting. But then I'm looking at the rest of it here. We got Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer. Florence Pugh is in it. Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Jack Quaid, Matt Damon, Kenneth Branagh, Gary Oldman, Rami Malek, Matthew Modine, Josh Hartnett, like David Krumholtz. Jesus Christ, like that is a fucking cast.
Mhm.
And I'm even looking at like some of the supporting actors, like they're not like
Scott Grimes.
super well-known people, but I know them from things.
Like I said, Scott Grimes.
Like Scott Grimes is in The Orville.
Yeah.
Olivia Thirlby, she was in Dread. Michael Anagarano, he was in Sky High. Casey Affleck is in it. James Remar, who's been in a million movies. Jason Clarke, who's been in a million movies. Alden Ehrenreich, who played Solo in the Solo film.
Mhm.
David Dastmalchian, who was Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad.
He was also one of the Joker's goons in The Dark Knight.
He was, yeah. He was the guy that was wearing the Rachel pin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, man. Like this is a stacked. I'm looking at how long the cast list is, and like this movie's going to be about 8 hours if there's that many characters in it. But I'm kind of excited to see it. I'm looking forward to seeing another movie from him that relies on like realism and real events, because I think that's one of the things that make
I'm still looking for
Dunkirk
Michael
so good.
Caine in this movie list
He'll probably be in there.
somewhere.
He might be like the narrator at the beginning of the film or something like that, you know.
Well, I don't think he's done a movie without him.
So, looking at a little bit of facts and trivia here, Christopher Nolan was born in July 30th, 1970 in London. Began making short films at a young age and went from being an indie filmmaker, like I said, with that first movie, to a guy that's like a big budget legend now at this point. He's been nominated for 5 Oscars, but has not won yet. I'm going to bring up his bio here so I can see what his nominations were for. So he was nominated for Best Motion Picture and Best Director for Dunkirk. He was nominated for Best Motion Picture and Original Screenplay for Inception, and Best Screenplay Written for the Screen for Memento. Those are his only nominations. I think it's kind of like robbery.
Mhm.
I mean, he should have probably got something for Interstellar, maybe even if it was just like a writing nomination or something.
Yeah.
um,
Considering how much work he put into it too, because he worked with astrophysicists. He worked with people who knew about black holes and stuff, and they said the only way that they'd agree is if there was the degree of realism was substantial. You know,
that's like a kind of a thing for him for all of his movies. Like he really does put his heart and soul into making sure that the movies are authentic, even if they are like high concept science fiction. He tries. He often works with his brother Jonathan Nolan. What's that, Mike?
I like the trademarks later on.
Yeah. So I'm looking at like his top 10 favorite movies. This tells you a lot about like some of the things we already talked about. Christopher Nolan's top 10 favorite movies are 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Black Hole, Blade Runner, Chinatown, The Hitcher, Lawrence of Arabia, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Wow, he likes like the worst of all the Bond films. Star Wars Episode 4: New Hope, The Man Who Would Be King, Topkapi, and anything by Stanley Kubrick. Those are his favorite movies. So that tells you a lot about, that. He does not like using computer graphics in his movies and purposely avoided them when he made Batman Begins. He was originally slated to do the Howard Hughes biopic that then went to Martin Scorsese. He says that his primary influences are Kubrick and Ridley Scott, as you had already said, Kev.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he's an interesting guy. So what were we saying, like his trademark things?
Yeah, IMDb has like 39 trademarks to him.
I'm looking for them now. Are they down towards the bottom?
One of them is Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Begins his movies and intros his main characters with close-ups of their hands performing an action.
Mm-hmm. He frequently casts Christian Bale, Kenneth Branagh, Michael Caine, Tom Hardy, Anne Hathaway, Cillian Murphy, Gary Oldman, Josh Stewart, and Jeremy Theobald. He has a lot of flashbacks in his films. His films conclude often with the two central characters discussing the results of the events of the film. That happens in Tenet. I'm not going to say it explains the whole plot of the movie, but they do talk about it at the end.
Hey, here's your non-linear timeline.
Yeah, non-linear timelines are one of his things. Storylines usually involve a determined character seeking vengeance. Often casts actors against their normal type.
Yep.
Loves using hard cuts in his transition to new scenes. His protagonists will often resort to tactics of physical or psychological torture to gain information. A lot of his characters often participate in unreal physical, scenes. Like I'm thinking of the scene with Joey Gordon-Levitt in Inception, where they're in the room that's spinning upside down, and he's trying to keep his balance as he's chasing the guy down the hallway.
That was actually one of those rotating rooms,
because he
dancing on the ceiling with Lionel Richie.
Because he hates CGI.
He typically ends his films with a character giving a philosophical monologue.
Mm-hmm. That's how Tenet ended. I'm not going to say it helped explain the film, but it ended that way.
That's how Dunkirk ended too.
Yeah. His films often contain blackmail. He likes to end a lot of his films with the character's fate being open to interpretation. Loves using enormous visual scope and heavy emphasis on locations and architecture. His antagonists are often motivated by philosophical beliefs rather than money. Think about the Joker burning all that cash in that one scene.
He just wants to watch the world.
Some men just like to watch the world burn. Use of characters with mysterious backgrounds. Yeah, it's his trademarks are pretty friggin' obvious, I think, at times. Hello? That's Newsly.me. They want to know why Kevin was comparing them to to HAL 9000. So the last thing I wanted to say about Chris Nolan is I think the reason he hasn't won an Oscar yet or been nominated more often is he's getting the Spielberg Scorsese treatment. Where early in their careers they were looked at as one type of director, and they would get a nomination here and there as a good job, but not serious enough to get the Oscar. So I feel like he's going to win one day, but it's going to be kind of like Spielberg, where Spielberg had to wait till the 90s and make a movie like Schindler's List in order to get an Oscar. But yeah, I think he definitely will win something at some point. I'm really looking forward to Oppenheimer. I'm hoping that's a movie that lives up to the hype.
Maybe Oppenheimer will be his
Schindler's List. Maybe we'll see.
And I just heard, this is rumor floating around, Beantown and all, but he's working on a realistic version of Teletubbies that we can expect to see.
With a lot of loud music and
with Pinky Winky and Lala. Yeah.
Before we move on to our closing segments here, have either of you watched Andor yet?
Yes.
I have watched all 4.
Yes.
I have watched all 4. I am up to date.
It is a slow burn.
I have a hot take on it. I don't like it so far.
Okay.
I am
it's a slow
fucking
burn.
bored.
Which is tough to say, right? It's tough to
Yeah,
get that out
it hurts me to say because I love Star Wars, but I'm bored.
No.
Adrian, we watched the first 3 episodes, and Adrian was like, "This is boring."
Yeah,
I'm feeling it too. I have to keep that confidence because the way I hear the way it's explained, it's like this is it's not a typical Star Wars movie. It is a spy movie.
mm,
And they're setting down the groundwork for the spy movie, you know.
like I actually had trouble staying awake during the first episode. I was like, man, this is really slow. I'm actually thinking to myself, you know what? I don't know if Andor was that interesting a character to do a prequel show for. I would have rather had a show all about K2SO.
Yeah.
or the blind dude and his friend with the giant gun. So, Mike, you have any beer wisdom for us this evening?
My beer wisdom, yes. Where there is beer, laughter is never far behind.
And where there's beer, you usually need to take a piss after the third one.
Any final thoughts on our drinks this evening? I liked my mixed drink. I thought it was very tasty, and I wish I had more Fanta because I don't have enough to make another one.
I thought the beers were good.
I enjoyed my beers from my good friend Mike, and a nice little dessert beer to finish it off. I was thinking I should have held on to this for when I had my fire pit going. When I have a fire pit going, to caramelize it to see if it would enhance the flavor.
You could always buy another one.
Give it a probe.
Yes, I could. You're right. I can see if I can find more s'more stout by the Big Muddy Brewing.
So thank you everybody for joining us tonight for episode 70. This is 77, right? Yeah, episode 77. The deep dive into the career of Christopher Nolan. We hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it for you. Don't forget, you can drop us a line at filmsfermentation@gmail.com or visit us at linktree.com/filmsfermentation to get all of our social media and podcast links. Don't forget to stop by the Crossroads between Pickled and Fermented next week as we present episode 78, Best Jump Scares. We're going to be working our way towards Halloween. So the next couple episodes are going to be kind of, scare themed in a way, just to kind of build up to our Halloween episode, which is going to be all about the Universal movie monsters and our ideas for recasting those characters. But in the meantime, next week will be episode 78, Best Jump Scares. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you for stopping by.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey, Ken.
You're right. Hey.
Baby,
sorry for the delay,
if you ever wondered whatever became of me, I'm living
on the air
in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati,
WKRP. I'm feeling it tonight because I got my microphone now. So
Nice.
Got my mic in front of me. I had the pop guard on it, but
I
I
got
got my
mine
nerves.
too. This is my microphone, and now you guys can't see my mouth moving either.
I just felt I felt a little. I don't know. I felt like
you
I
had
saw
Mike
Donald,
envy.
Yeah, I saw Donald set up, and I had a little bit of Mike envy going. Yeah,
Microphone
envy.
Better than the three of us.
Yeah, I know. He was the guest, and he had the best sound of all of us.
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah, he messaged me on Twitter the other day because he had just listened to our last episode, the video game episode.
Right.
Kevin made the remark that if you come on his show, he'll buy you pizza. And so he messaged me on Twitter, and he's like, "Pizza was not promised."
Nobody listens to me ever.
Plus, it wasn't delivery; it was DiGiorno.
That's right.
Yeah, I was going to add that to the notes from last week. Donna wanted to make sure that no pizza will be delivered.
No pizzas were harmed in the making of Donald's podcast.